Mic check, 1 2 1 2.
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music. Today we have in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Alex Heiche, who's the founder of Sound Royalties. He started this company in 2014, serves as the company's CEO. Alex is a strong and outspoken music advocate, defending the rights of songwriters, producers, and artists, as well as the importance of those in the creative world being fairly compensated for their work while retaining their music rights and royalties. Gee, what a novel concept. He has worked with leading music industry professionals, including Grammy Award winners, platinum recording artists, and notable music industry executives in every genre. As a respected thought leader in the music business, Alex has shared his knowledge and insight at many industry events, including Grammy Week, the Sync Summit, and the Los Angeles Digital Content Marketplace. Additionally, Alex's expert opinions have been featured in top publications such as Billboard, Music Business Worldwide, Music Connection, and Digital Music News. He's a co-owner of Studio Bank in Nashville, Tennessee, and a lifetime member of the Songwriters Hall of Fame and Nashville's Songwriters Association International. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure to be here.
First question, how did you get started in this business?
I guess you got to rewind all the way to my childhood. I was musically inclined as a child. I loved music. I was the kid that was playing the multiple instruments and in the band and not on the fields.
What were your musicians of choice? Or I should say, what were your instruments of choice?
Piano, then clarinet, then alto sax, soprano sax, flute, and carried on from there.
And then you developed into this at some point?
Well, no. So I love music, and music's my first love.
Right.
I just took me a while to figure out it's not my first language. And that came about as I was going into college. I was frustrated with music because I realized, and people were like, wow, that's an intricate piece. Wow, that's amazing. And I just shake my head and inside say, no, I could condition myself to just recreate just about everything, but I couldn't speak like some of the people that you and I admire so much and that we get to work with. And so that's when I kind of turned to software, and I spent about a decade in the high-tech markets and software.
Yeah, because as I was looking at your bio, you've obviously worked on some other components when you talk about software. I saw the Icarus Corporation, Worldwide Artificial Intelligence Engineering Software, big words for me. OC Systems, this one kind of intrigued me. Software development, testing, debugging tools, Zero-G weightless flights for entertainment.
Yeah, that was a little later on. So Zero-G was a company that was modified Boeing 727. You may know from NASA the term, about NASA and their plane, the Vomit Comet.
Right, the one that would go up and down and create a weightless atmosphere. Yeah,
correct,
okay.
Parabolic flight. And so it was a private company that would provide the same services. And so when Space Adventures acquired Zero-G, I was brought on to help with that acquisition and to run Zero-G. And Space Adventures is the company you may or may not know of that provides trips to the International Space Station for individuals.
Did not know that.
Last I checked, last we were at $55 million for a 10-day stay on the International Space Station, and a fair amount of people, 7 different individuals had gone 8 trips. One gentleman went twice.
But music still being your first love. And I love the part, where you say the artists being compensated fairly for their work. That's a topic of discussion we continue to have all the time on the show, because the selling of music now is so different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And obviously that little nugget of money, that revenue stream, keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Well, I think Quincy Jones said it the best years ago. He said, there's the label business and there's the publishing business, and the publishing business is a pennies game. It's a pennies business, but there's a whole lot of pennies.
Right.
And when we shifted from a sale, sell me this CD, sell me this vinyl, sell me this 8-track, to an MP3 download, we went from album to singles. And so for 99 cents, but it was still a sale. And at the end of the day, the artist, the writer, the industry didn't necessarily care if you lost that cassette in your glove box. Maybe they even preferred it because you'd go buy another one. They made the sale. But there was a paradigm shift as we went into streaming where it no longer is a penny business, it's a micro penny business, because that sale doesn't happen when you download it. It's when you play it. And so now it's more about getting the song downloaded and getting it played again and again and again. So there's been a dramatic shift in how money is earned and then what you should do about it as a writer and artist. And that's what we're seeing now. So yes, it was a pennies business. Yes, it's much smaller. It's a micro penny business. But there's plenty of people that are understanding how to move around in that world and how to make money in that world. And that's one of the benefits we have of analyzing income streams and royalty flows and seeing what people are doing to kind of connect the dots and see the shift. It's not doom and gloom like many people would like to think. And where I'm going with that is look at the writers. They're saying how bad it is, and it is. And it's turning around, but they're seeing 15 multiples on the purchase of their publishing rights. Why? Because people with money know that, hey, these are on the upswing, and there's huge upside potential.
The one thing that is the constant in your conversation is the publishing. Unfortunately, a lot of songwriters don't understand that concept of the business. They think about getting a song out there, or I should say, they think about writing a song, getting it out there, hoping it sells, but they don't understand the whole minutia of publishing, and that's the biggest chunk of it.
That is a big chunk for your writers out there, and many don't understand it. But on the artist side, there's misconceptions as well. For the performing writer and the artist and the performers, they're missing out. And so I'd say and I'm going to conservatively say 80%, but I bet you it's more than that. The people that come through our doors that we talk to, they're not collecting everything they should.
Right.
And we see that time and time again, because it's not like, hey, I'm a writer, I'm going to go collect my money and that's it. Well, no, there's many different streams that you should be collecting that they're not. And there's no tutorial. And I've heard people say, hey, why didn't my PRO tell me about that? And I was like, well, that's not what your PRO does. They do the performance rights on your songwriter share and your publishing. Oh, well, why didn't my label tell me that? Well, your label's collecting the artist share for your digital performance royalties, but it's your own responsibility to go to Sound Exchange or however and collect your digital performance royalties. So, it's easy to point the finger, but there's so many different streams, and there's no one job to say, hey, these are everything you should be collecting.
And I think that's something else you just said. There are so many different streams that they don't even begin to look in. But more importantly, you said there's no tutorial for it. And it is about education. You have to educate yourself or find someone of knowledge and integrity to educate you so you know where to go pick up those pieces of the pennies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I'm assuming Sound Royalties helps with that to a certain extent?
Yes, to a certain extent, and a very large extent. It's not our core business, and therefore we don't charge for it. That's something we do for free for the people that we work with, that we communicate with, that type of stuff. So at the crux, Sound Royalties is a specialty finance firm. We provide funding to creatives, songwriters, artists, producers, and even indie labels in acquiring content. But we do it in a unique way. But at the end of the day, finding these royalties are things that we started to do and have done well, but it's not something we make money on.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about Sound Royalties and exactly what it is and the services that you offer and who would really fit under your umbrella of this company that you've created. In the studio today, we have Alex Heiche, who's the CEO and founder of Sound Royalties, and we're going to dig a little more into his company here on the business side of music.
This is Steve Pennington, and you're listening to the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, this is Vinny Ribas, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag.com. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender. We're in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, with Alex Heiche, who's the CEO and founder of Sound Royalties. We started to touch a little bit on it before the break. Okay, you created Sound Royalties. Why? Mm-hmm. And exactly what is it?
So 2013, 2014, I had spent a decade in software, high tech, spent a decade in specialty finance, and really was looking for something that I'd be interested in and passionate about. You know, I'd had some success in life and really wasn't passionate about what I was doing.
Right.
And I reverted back to looking at my life and where I'd been and where I had come from, and thoughts always came back to music. And so I started to kind of look at the music industry, and I thought two things. I said, well, could I bring software to the music industry? And I realized, well, we probably don't need another plugin in the software industry. There's in the music industry, there's enough of that. And then I looked at finance, and I said, well, maybe specialty finance is something. And I started to look at what was going on in terms of finance and funding for creatives. And that's when I started seeing a need.
Did such a thing exist?
Not to what Sound Royalties is. And let me explain. When I came, what I did is it ended up being about a year traveling around and meeting with the different companies, whether they were private financial institutions or the traditional banks that everybody's familiar with. The traditional banks, fantastic. The issue is banking regulations really limited them on what they could do, mm-hmm. especially coming after the 2008 crisis. Things were real tight. And so there were limitations that the market was left underserved. And then there was the other side of the industry, which every single company that I came across, I talked to them, see what they were doing, tried to see if there was an ability to have synergies to work together. And the core problem I had with each one of them at the end, and once I started to realize what was going on, is they all owned copyrights. So then I realized the industry was two models. There was a banking model, and there was a pawn shop model. And the pawn shop model being, hey, these companies were trying to buy the copyrights. If they couldn't get them, they'd loan in advance on them and often collapse, seize them, put in right of first refusal language and force the sale to them if the creative needed more money and things like that. And,
right.
and so that I considered to be a pawn shop model. And then the banking model had its limitations we discussed at the time. And so I decided at that point it was time to create something new. And with some basic principles, I created Sound Royalties with one, we don't buy copyrights. Alex Heiche, do not own copyrights, and Sound Royalties does not. And it was specifically set up that way because when people came through our doors, we had no intention of buying the copyrights. And then secondly, the key for me was that we don't even get them in default. Because if in a situation where a company can get them in default, you could err on the side of maybe they're incentivized to overextend someone. Maybe they're incentivized to put someone in that situation so they can get what they want. And so we set up a model where, one, we don't buy copyrights, two, we don't get them in default, and that created a situation where we started to allow for pass-through income. And that's where the entire industry is used to what's called a 100% recoupment model, mm-hmm. where you take an advance and you don't see a penny till you recoup. Well, that's stretching your paycheck from every 2 weeks, which most Americans struggle on doing, to every month, every 6 months, to every 2 years. So you're holding your breath. And quite often it was just long enough to where the individual creative was forced to sell.
We've chatted about this before in other episodes. That recoupment model isn't dollar in, dollar out. And many times, because especially with the record labels, you have attorneys and accountants involved. In fact, in most record labels that I've either worked at or have associated with, that's the bulk of the employees within the company. So, you know, it might be $1 in but $4 out to pay that recoupable back. It's why you hear some artists who've made $1 million, but they got to generate $2 million to pay back what they owe to the label, because there's all these kind of little hidden factors in there.
Yes.
You're getting tour support, or you're getting the bus paid for, or you're getting your wardrobe or your photo shoot. But it all turns out that's recoupable, and you think it's great. But really, what you've done is you've gone to the bank and you've taken out a loan, and they've written you the check, and now you have to pay it back with interest.
Plus, there are pizza party fees and everything else,
Yeah.
and that's where. The key is listen, nothing's free out there. So there's going to be fees. And frankly, the labels offer a value add and a service. But if you know what you're getting into and know what you're recouping against and what those fees are, then great. But quite often, everybody we bump into doesn't know. And that's where the problem is. And so back to the 100% recoupment, on top of that, you're not going to see a penny until you recoup every dollar plus those expenses, right?
Right.
And so we set up a model. We're not the label. We don't replace them. We're not the publisher. We don't replace them, the PRO. We're just a financial institution. But if we expect $2 per quarter and 8 comes in, guess what? 6 passes through. And then it jumps to 12, well, now 10. And so based on an annual threshold, we allow income to pass through as soon as you hit a certain threshold. In the first monthly check or the last, but we set it up so that money passes through, and it's not a 100% base recoupment model, which is something we hadn't seen before we came on scene.
Who does this fit best for?
I set it up so that we could help as many people as possible. Now, you can't help everyone, and we all know there's tens of millions of writers and artists that never even get that initial step out, and so we can't help everyone. So what we do is we say, if you're earning $5,000 a year or more in royalty income on an annual basis, so that's not very much, $5,000 on a year on an annual basis, right? In royalty income, we're going to try to help you and definitely reach out to us. All the way up to the global Grammy Award-winning multi-platinum superstar, we can work with them as well. Is
this replacing the traditional record label model, or is this something that's just brand new, outside of the box? Maybe there is no box.
And I'm glad you asked that. That's the misconception. One of the misconceptions. Listen, if you have a label deal or you're working with a label or want to, great. That's not us. But if you're working with them or going to work with them, you should still talk to us, because you may not need to take the advance from them. Use their services, work with them, let them invest in you as a partner, and let them launch you. That's not us. We're just a financial institution that can provide funding, even quite often if you're unrecouped. And same with your publisher. If you're a writer and you've got a publishing deal, many come to us and say, well, can I still work with you? And often the answer is yes, but you stay with that publisher or the label that you want to work with, or the distributor or the PRO. We don't replace or compete with anyone. We're just a private financial institution that provides funding, whether you want to help pay the bills between your next song release, whether you're trying to fund your own video or your own creativity, whether you're trying to buy a new studio, pay the mortgage, whatever it may be. Think of us more like a bank that doesn't replace any of those services.
What's the criteria?
Starts at $5,000 a year in annual income or more. And I tend to tell people, listen, you need to be open-minded in terms of just talking to us, because often they come much later and, oh, I wish I'd known, but I had these tax liens. Well, that's why we're a private financial institution. Quite often we can still help, even if you have IRS liens. Yeah. Oh, I had this, I had that. The music industry, all the way up to the global superstar, they used to jump from album release to album release. Those were their major paycheck days. And that was their high of their income, and then it dropped to lows. Now they're jumping from tour to tour, but it's still a sine curve. They're high and low in the income, and everybody on the way up, it's great, and on the way down, they suffer a few dings and bruises and scratches. We're used to seeing those.
It's interesting you brought up about the tax liens. We've actually worked with a couple artists and have known an artist or two on that global level. I mean, we're talking internationally renowned entertainers who either through bad business on their part or bad business management found themselves in those situations where, wait a minute, what happened? I got myself in a jam.
Yep.
And, you know, I owe the IRS this much money and I can't pay my mortgage. That doesn't seem to affect what you're doing as long as that royalty income is there, right?
Yes, but even if the royalty income is being seized, sometimes we can still help and maybe clear up that tax obligation or get them on a payment plan. So there's different ways. We always welcome the opportunity to talk to people about their situation and see if we might be able to help or at least point them in the right direction. But back to, you know, bad management or decisions from the global superstar, even with the best teams, unfortunately, I had a university professor ask me this, and he's like, why do so many people in the music industry have IRS liens? And I looked at him and I said, well, you're a professor. Look at the other professors at this institution. I said, how many do you think have tax liens? He said, oh, very few. And I said, great. And I said, you guys get paid from the university? Yes. And I said, good. They withhold taxes? He said, yeah. And I said, now, let me ask you this. All educated, right? And he goes, oh, absolutely. And I said, great. So we know you're smart. You guys got regular income, you pay your taxes. And you have very few tax problems. He said, that's right. And I said, okay. Now, I want you to look around and tell me this. If the institution, one, stopped withholding taxes for everybody, and at the end of the year, you had a tax obligation, but don't answer yet. Secondly, this year you might make $10. Next year you make $10,000 from your English class. And next year you might make $5. So it's unpredictable. And then you're paid from each of the classes, and you might be paid from some student body for this, but you need to know to go find it. So you've got income streams that are starting and stopping, that are ebbing and flowing and rising and falling, and taxes aren't withheld. How many of the professors would have tax problems? I didn't get an answer out of them, but I think we know what it was.
It would be a much higher percentage, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to keep talking here with Alex Heiche, who's the CEO and founder of Sound Royalties. I've got to tell you, probably one of the most interesting conversations that we've had in a long time, and what a really unique and special service that you're offering. This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Hey, this is Paul Aldrich, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site? Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender. We're back in the studio with Alex Heiche, CEO and founder of Sound Royalties. And during the break, I was telling you, this is probably one of the more intriguing things I've heard that's out there for people that work within the music business. You know, in my background working with record labels, and I've said this before on the show, there's a lot of songwriters, there's a lot of artists that will go out and sign deals with record labels, not knowing the full ramifications of everything that's involved. We used to joke about, you know, you signed a record deal with one company, it would be life plus 20 because, you know, they owned everything. You couldn't get out of it. And, you know, It's basically their career, not your career. How do you think, well, let me back up here. What do you think's better these days? Because we talked a little bit during the break about how much the business model has changed. The industry is constantly evolving. you know, the blueprint that we had 50, 60 years ago is not the same one that we have today. Does an artist, do they really need to go out and get a record deal? I just would like to have your personal opinion. Or do you think they can make it on their own without that deal?
That's a double-edged sword. And at the end of the day, eventually, yes, artists are starting and launching on their own and getting further than they used to. But there's a definite need for a label. There's definite need for distributors. There's definite need for publishers. So, yes, they do need that once they hit a certain level, and there is help in that. But, you know, I was talking with someone yesterday about the label model. I mean, it used to be about radio play and relationships. But now when you have 25,000 songs being uploaded a day, I don't care how many labels they are, can they really leverage those relationships and grow the music? And the model has shifted more into, can they market you? Can they promote you and get people to listen to your music in the streaming platforms and everywhere else? And so there's a shift, and it's those that follow that are going to come out on the other end okay.
I think that's one thing that there's such a differing of opinion out there with people. I still have artists that come to me that want that record deal. I don't think they're ready for the record deal. They, you know, they really need to evolve their career a little more. And B, you brought up something. You know, it's 25,000 downloads a day out there. The record label can only service so many of these. You know, they don't have that many tentacles out there. It is about relationships, and that's where I think we've talked about this in the past on radio tours. You know, a radio station may get 5, 6, 7 artists coming through a week, if not in a day, promoting their new single. A lot of times, and I hear this from more than one artist, as they're leaving, the program director or the music director will go, "Yeah, I love you, babe. We're going to play your song." And they don't. It's just a way to get them out the door. So the artist and or the songwriter have got to take more responsibility for their own career.
Absolutely. And they need to find a team, and in this case a label that they trust and can listen to, and says, listen, I need you to hit these radio stations. I need you to do this. I need you to hit these festivals. And yes, these festivals aren't going to pay you like everybody else, but the 100,000 fans are going to start streaming your music, and they're 100,000 fans. And it's those type of things, finding a relationship and a partner you can work with, trust, and lean on their expertise. So what do smart leaders do? They surround themselves not thinking they know something, but surround themselves with those that can advise them appropriately.
Right, and give them correct information.
Yeah.
And because the business is changing constantly, it doesn't hurt to surround yourself with young minds who have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the business. When I was at one of the labels, and I've said this a couple times before in different episodes, you know, my boss at one point, I said to him, why are we getting out of the singles business? Well, there's no money in singles. We're selling albums. Yeah. And this is about 1999, maybe 2000.
Yeah.
Well, that whole model shifted dramatically within a year. We all looked at iTunes as the saving grace, but we stopped selling albums at $16.98, and we're selling downloads at 99 cents.
Yep.
And you don't sell 10 times as many downloads as you did on an album that had 10 cuts. And so it changes the model. I don't think we're done exploring where this business is going. You know, if I had a crystal ball and could see what's in the horizon, you know, that would be great. I think how music is being delivered, I don't think we've seen the end of it. I don't.
Absolutely not.
I think there's new things that are going to come about. The two things that still work, I think, personally, is getting out there and performing live in front of an audience and having something physical that you can sell or even give to the fans that they can remember you by and keep track of you, whether it is a CD or it is a thumb drive or it's a hat or a T-shirt or a poster. You have to have some kind of a physical presence while you're performing because it is an emotional moment for them. You're making memories for them. Don't let that slide by and just think that it's not anything.
Absolutely. No, music is about emotion. Music is about memories. It takes us back to different parts of our lives. You know, music can pick us up for a night on the town or console us when we're down. And so it's tugging on those emotions. And so in terms of the physical, whether it's a phone case, whether it's a fob or a sticker that goes on their laptop and reminds them, you know, or that T-shirt, you know, sure, I go on Saturday and go in that T-shirt drawer and see that concert T-shirt, and I'm walking out the door, and I'm like, oh, let me play that band again, right? It's how do you
You're triggering something.
Correct. And so there the physical is very important. Back to the touring that you mentioned, it's more important than ever, but not everybody's doing it to the level that we see generates the most income. For example, touring used to be a loss leader. Let's throw a lot of money at the tour and sell the albums and lose money on the tour. Then it became a moneymaker, and everybody focused on how do I make money on this tour. The ones that are really making money right now are the ones that are looking at beyond that. And the way they're looking at it is saying, how do I get people to my tour and make money on it? But I know if I pre-market the show, even if the show's sold out, as I head into that town, I can get them all to stream my music, because before they come to the show, they want to hear all my old stuff and my new stuff so they're ready for the show. When I leave that town, do I do a show recap so that it reminds them again, oh, that was an awesome show, let me go play that music again. Same with festivals. You and I were talking about festivals on the break there for a little bit. We're seeing huge spikes in income for bands that are going from festival to festival. Why? Look at Pilgrimage. Great. I mean, those are some big bands there. But you take a festival with 100,000 people at it, whether it's in Florida or Joshua Tree or whatever, they're looking at the schedule of the big bands and all the little bands and saying, okay, Saturday at 3, who do I want to listen to? And they go stream all those songs. After the show, they go remember that band. They listen to that band's entire catalog of work that they liked. Those streams are creating... Are they creating Justin Timberlake type stream revenue? Absolutely not. But these are bands that most people don't know the name of, but they're generating hundreds of thousands of dollars going from festival to festival to festival because they figured out the streaming model.
I think that's what's worked so well for Bonnaroo over the years. 7 stages, and you might have Willie Nelson and Government Mule. But then you've got all these little regional acts, maybe semi-national, some local acts that are helping to make the soup, per se. Pilgrimage is a great example. I mean, Jack White and Lionel Richie, I mean, two opposite ends of the spectrum. But what a great lineup. Lionel Richie would probably get my wife and I there, but then we would learn all these other acts, including those up-and-coming acts that are maybe not playing for a lot of money, but if we like them, we're going to buy their shirt, or if they've got a CD, we're going to buy their CD.
Yep. And you're probably going to go back and put them on your Apple Music because you already paid your $10 a month or your Spotify, and you start to stream them. It used to be, oh, I like that band. I don't know if I'll buy the $10 CD. Now it's like, oh, let me just mark them. Let me go listen to them later. And if they can get you to remember them in one fashion or another and hit play, it's all a numbers game. Like we talked about in the beginning, it's a micro pennies business, but the net is much bigger.
So let me ask you this: how can our listeners find you?
On social media, whether it's Sound Royalties on Instagram or Alex Heiche on Instagram, AlexHeiche. It's very easy to reach out to us, connect with us through Sound Royalties and Alex Heiche on Instagram, Facebook, our website, soundroyalties.com, or 800 number, 844-4ALL-MUSIC.
4ALL-MUSIC. Great. Alex, thanks for being on the show.
That's a pleasure. I appreciate being here. It's been an honor.
As a listener, you know that the Business Side of Music podcast is free, but in order to keep it running, consider yourself becoming a patron of our show. You can do this by going to our Patreon page on our website, which is www.businesssideofmusic.com, and click on the Support Podcast button. When you become a patron of our podcast, you'll have access to material that you won't be hearing on our regular show, insight from industry leaders, such as Alex here, that is designed for our patron members, and have the ability to purchase the Business Side of Music merchandise that you can find on our website at a discount. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Traci Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Ribas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.